All right, thank you for joining today's webinar. We're going to start in just a few moments. Just a reminder, if you do have any questions throughout the webinar, just please place those questions in chat. If there's time at the end, we will go ahead and answer those questions. However, if there's not enough time at the end, we will go ahead and include the answers to those questions in the follow-up email that we send with the recording. And so with that, I'd like to introduce our presenters today. Next slide, please. Our webinar today is Wealth Building Made Simple, Steps to Strengthen Your Financial Well-Being. The hosts are Monica Balafoutas, Director of Wealth and Trust Investments, who has been with Orrstown Bank for 17 years and oversees our wealth and trust investment management, operations, fiduciary, and compliance areas. Andrew Reath, Wealth and Trust Portfolio Manager, has 15 years of industry experience and oversees investment strategy and client portfolios. Both Andy and Monica have obtained certifications in the investment and financial industry, most notably the Chartered Financial Analyst designation, or CFA. And with that, I'll hand it over to Monica and Andy.
Okay, thank you, John. So just to start out here today, a little bit about Orrstown Bank and our wealth management department. So we are a group of approximately 50 employees who have been helping clients plan, manage, and meet their financial dreams and goals for almost 4 decades now. We have teams of experienced advisors located across our footprint in Maryland and Pennsylvania, and they are taking a disciplined, client-centered approach to help clients at all stages of their financial life meet their goals. Just a few examples of what we offer here in Orrstown Wealth Management is financial planning. We also offer investment management for individuals, businesses, institutions, and many of our local nonprofit organizations as well. We offer assistance with retirement accounts such as 401k rollovers and IRAs, trust services, and estate planning and settlement. In this 4-part series, we're going to dive into ideas and examples to get you thinking about steps to strengthen your own financial well-being. Now, we know that everyone on this call is probably at different stages in their life and in their financial journey. So this might highlight areas that you need to work on or confirm that you are already on the right steps. In this first session today, we're going to cover a lot of ground. We're going to cover these first 2 columns, talking about financial habits and then savings and investing. And this will lay our groundwork then to be able to get into the planning sessions in the next 3, where we'll cover financial planning, retirement planning, and then legacy and estate planning. There will also be a bonus webinar in the beginning of June, and we'll show a slide later on with the different webinars, dates, and times. But there will be a bonus webinar in the beginning of June that will cover fraud and scams that everyone should know for 2026 from our fraud and security group. So that'll be a great webinar. I highly recommend that you join that. So getting started here with habits for long-term wealth. Now, I will tell you, while we do have some clients who may have won the lottery or inherited a large lump sum of money, most of our clients were consistent savers and investors over decades, steadily investing into retirement accounts and investment accounts. Also, they were diligent and reviewed their financial coverage or their insurance coverages, financial planning, and estate plans on a regular basis as life changed with their financial advisors. And the last thing I would say here is that they also are teaching other family members, whether that be children or grandkids, making this a generational succession of long-term wealth planning. As we jump into the slides here, why habits matter. It's often our behaviors, not our income alone, that drives long-term wealth. The interesting thing is that on a daily basis, almost half of our actions are habits, not choices that we actively make, but habits. And money often follows the same unconscious habits. So the goal here is to highlight good habits and systems that help drive that long-term wealth, because it's often the consistent small actions that compound over time that get us there. This leads us into budgeting as a habit. Now, I will tell you, I was once told that if I talk about budgeting in a presentation, everyone is going to fall asleep and no one's going to hear what I have to say. So I ask you as I get through these next few slides to please stay with us because the more exciting things are coming up. However, the goal in budgeting, which is typically a cornerstone of building wealth, is that we want to make awareness of aligning our money and its priorities and having control over the cash that's flowing in and out of our accounts. So we need to be aware of where the money is going and our actions with it. Now, budgeting often stresses people out, but it doesn't need to. There's no one size fits all. Everyone can use a different framework. There's tons of them out there to make your budgeting work for you. Here we have 3 examples, and I will tell you the ones that typically work are the ones that are simple and easy for you to maintain. So the first example here is the zero-based budgeting. This is where you know your income that's coming in every month and you have a plan for every dollar. So at the end of the month, income minus expenses equals 0. So that might mean that this dollar goes towards savings, this one goes towards debt, this one goes towards maybe a mortgage payment or something. But every dollar has a job. One of the more common ones is the 50-30-20 rule. Again, this one is an easy one to start and stick with. And all we're doing here is saying 50% of my income is going to go towards my needs, whether that's rent or mortgage, my electric bill. 30% is going to go to my wants, such as vacations, and then 20% towards savings or debt pay down. The next one here is the envelope, or in a more modern world, the digital bucket method, where we're using different accounts for different money categories to control our spending so that we don't overspend. Just to kind of give you a real life example, I'll provide my own. In my family, I would say we're using somewhere between that 50-30-20 rule and the digital bucket. On payday, money automatically goes to one account that pays bills, a certain percentage. Another account is opened up for savings and one for investing, and money automatically flows to them so that I don't have to think about, did I overspend or can I, or did I meet my goals that I needed to in terms of savings? It automatically moves. And I know Andy, his family does something slightly different. So again, it's not a one size fits all. You pick what framework works for you. These are just a few examples. One of the things I would recommend the most, though, is to review your spending and look for habits that you have there or patterns. Often it's easy to track our income. Most people are paid every 2 weeks, so that's the easy part. It's the spending part that can get a little out of hand at times. So here's where there's a lot of simple apps and online tools that can help you spend. I would recommend at least starting out with looking at your latest bank statement or your mobile app and seeing, are there any patterns? If you see 20 so Amazon purchases, I think maybe that's a clue to make that maybe a little more of a cognizant choice next time you go into Amazon and you don't just hit that buy button. But tracking some of the spending and reviewing that to find the patterns, I think is a really big step for a lot of people when it comes to that budgeting. Even if you don't want to go to that $0 budget, if you at least look and find patterns. We often show some of the subscriptions and show a table at how quickly all of those little subscriptions can add up in a month, to $200-$300, where it doesn't seem like much with a Netflix subscription of $15, but once you add in all those streaming services, they tend to add up there. So just keep an eye on your spending. And then the other thing I would say is pay yourself first. Save and invest before you spend. Lifestyle growth, or often called lifestyle creep, is a real thing. So often as our earnings increase or we get pay raises, people's spending tends to increase with it. So by moving money automatically into savings and investing accounts, that will allow you to kind of make some small sacrifices today to relieve some financial stress later and freedom for tomorrow. I'm now going to go over a few examples of managing your lifestyle. So some hypothetical scenarios to show you how if we make some adjustments, we can save a lot for retirement or for the future. So here's our first hypothetical managing your lifestyle, home ownership. So at some point, many of us have gotten pre-approved for a mortgage where you often get pre-approved for the maximum you can afford. In this hypothetical, this might be a little extreme, but let's say we're pre-approved for $1 million home. But we're also looking at our expenses and thinking, well, maybe I could go with a $500,000 home instead, which I used to think that was a very high dollar amount for a home, but post-COVID and home prices running up, $500,000 is not as unreasonable as it used to be. But let's take these two examples and assume that we've got a 20% down payment on a 30-year mortgage at 6.75%. So that's giving us our mortgage payments there per year. And then taxes are about 1.25% of the home's value. And then insurance and upkeep is another 1% each year, bringing us in at a total cost for $1 million home of about $85,000 per year. Whereas the $500,000 home is half that at around $42,000. Now, imagine if we took that difference and invested it. In a few slides, I will show you what that looks like, but I don't want to give that away just yet, because we're going to look at some other purchases first. So as we continue to manage our lifestyle, now we're looking at car purchases. So this is a BMW 7 Series versus a BMW 5 Series. Again, hypothetical. Not sure these are still the prices today, but a hypothetical nonetheless. So here we have about a $39,000 difference in price. The catch is that we often don't think about the increase in insurance costs on the more expensive car, the increase in taxes from purchasing the more expensive car, and what if that more expensive car also needs premium fuel in it as well? So a lot of things add up here. Here in this hypothetical, it's showing about $20,000 per year in taxes, insurance, and fuel for the BMW 7 Series. And then for the 5 Series, about half that at $10,000. So if we took that difference and we bought the 5 Series, but still took that money from the 7 Series, the difference, and invested it over the next 5 years with an average annual rate of return of 6%, which is relatively conservative, at the end of 5 years, we'd have $108,000 in an investment account. Certainly enough to buy another new vehicle in 5 years if you would like. In my third and final example here of managing your lifestyle, we're talking about vacations, another thing that we often do. In this scenario, this is a couple who takes a 2-week vacation every year, and they typically like to go to a nice hotel, but they've been looking at their spending. They must have been on this webinar, and they have decided that they're going to try a condo instead. So that's a $2,800 savings per year. And because they're in a condo, there's a kitchen, and they're going to cook a few meals instead of eating every meal out for 2 weeks and save another $600. And then they're going to use some points and shop for cheaper flights, again, saving $1,400. So for a total annual savings of $4,800 per year. Now imagine if they vacation for the next 20 years with this in mind, and they invest that difference every year rather than spending it on that 2-week vacation. Again, 6% annual rate return, and we're at $187,000 in an investment account. All these little things begin to add up. When we add it up, and this is why I didn't give you the home management number earlier, because then you would have already known, but that was obviously our biggest savings by going with the $500,000 house versus the $1 million home. So again, reinvesting that difference over 20 years at a 6% hypothetical return, $1.65 million plus the other two options that we looked at, or the other two scenarios, we're looking at an investment account of almost $2 million, setting you up well for retirement. So smart decisions can really add up over time. These were large purchases that we looked at, but think about what would happen if you made those kind of adjustments and were cognizant of your spending on a daily basis. Can really add up over time. I'm going to hand it over to Andy now, and he's going to talk about why preparedness matters when life throws some unexpected events at us.
Thank you, Monica. So Monica went over financial habits to build long-term wealth. You also want a financial plan that's flexible and resilient because, we have sudden life changes that aren't always predictable. But financial resilience starts with anticipating and preparing for the unexpected. So there was a survey done of individuals under financial stress, and they cited 78% of those it was because of a loss of income, and 65% cited medical issues that put them under financial strain. These moments often come without warning and carry significant costs. A strong foundation built on emergency savings, proper insurance, and that flexible financial plan won't stop the storm, but it can soften the blow. So to weather that storm, you should build an emergency fund. Now, we've all had those unexpected costs from car repairs, home repairs, and we just outlined the medical bills and loss of income. So how much should I have in emergency savings? The general rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Now, if you're a dual income household, 3 months might be enough because if one of you loses your job, you're having a lower reduction, maybe you can just cut expenses and you can weather that storm. But if you're a single income household, you may need more like 6 months of living expenses in that emergency fund. So on the next slide, we also often get the question of, should I pay off debt or should I start saving and investing first? And it's both. You should really try and tackle paying off debt, managing your expenses, but also saving and investing at the same time. So you might not be at the 3 to 6 months in that emergency fund, but just getting started and getting $1,000 or $2,000 in a savings account to weather those storms and to keep you on track with your financial plan is a good start. And in a few slides, we'll see the impact of investing early and taking advantage of compound interest. But if you have debt and we're trying to pay down debt, which should I pay off first? And just like there's multiple options to tackle this. Let's say you hypothetically have a mortgage at 3%, a car loan at 8%, and various credit cards at high interest rates. It's best to tackle those high interest rate credit cards, not only because they are high interest rate, but also hopefully they're a lower balance than, say, your mortgage. So you can tackle that debt. You can take that monthly payment that you've been applying, and once you pay off one, you can take advantage of the snowball effect and apply that to the next credit bill that you have. And that can give you some momentum and some encouragement to continue to tackle your debt. But that's also kind of inevitable. So it's good to have a good credit score. So having various lines of credit available to you and having a good track record of paying your bills on a monthly basis gives you better approval rates, lower interest rates, and better terms on your loans. So it helps lower that overall financial cost when you do apply for credit. So we talked about managing debt. We started talking about, starting an emergency savings fund. But we all have different goals, and how do you invest for those different goals? So in this diagram at the bottom of the screen, you have emergency savings in cash or money market or CDs. You want that to be liquid and you want it to be stable for when you need access to it. Now, as you go out longer term, you can start to invest in higher risk assets like bonds and also into equities. And the longer that horizon is, the more you can afford to invest in even higher risk spectrum, so more into equities. And this example right here is the exact reason I got into wealth management. So this is hypothetical scenarios of different individuals investing $250 per month. So starting with the green line, we have a consistent saver that saves for 40 years, but they don't necessarily take on risk. They stay invested in cash and they earn 3.1% on their money. So they contributed $120,000 of their own money. That grew to $238,000. Now compare that to the gray dashed line where the individual started at 25, but only saved for 10 years, but they invested and earned 7.25% per year, but they only saved for 10 years again. So they put away $30,000 of their own money. That grew to $367,000. Now, that purple line is the same $250 per month, but they waited and didn't get started on saving until they were 35. And they saved for 30 years, so put away $90,000 of their own money, but because they had less years for compounding of interest, that only grew to $318,000. But the clear winner here is the blue line that starts at 25, saves for the full 40 years, earning that 7.25% rate of return, putting away $120,000 of their own money, and that grows to $685,000. Now you may be looking at this saying, I'm not 25, I'm not 35 years old, I'm say 55 years old. You still have roughly 10 years till you might be retiring. So you could be in the scenario of that early saver that saved for 10 years and put away $30,000 in a 10-year time frame. And we plan and invest for a retirement that might be 30 years. So it's never too late to get started and invest for your financial freedom. So how do you invest? You know, a lot of people, hear the saying of buy low and sell high. Now that's market timing. And as this illustration shows, perfect market timing would require you to buy when the market bottoms and to sell when prices are near their peak. However, it's difficult to know when the market is about to turn higher or lower. And all too often, investors buy as the market is reaching its peak, when the enthusiasm in the market is highest, and then sell after a steep drop. Investors who attempt to time the market can have success over the short term, but it is very difficult to be successful over the long term. So here at Orstown, we promote and encourage staying invested and having time in the market. So on the next slide, you'll see an investment of $10,000 in the S&P 500 starting in January of 2006 and invested through the end of last year. And you can see in the first bar there that if you stayed invested and you never got out of the market, you never had the fear of getting out of the market, you would have had an average return of 11%. And that $10,000 investment would have grown to just over $80,000. Now, if you got worried about the market and you got out of the market and you missed just the 10 best days over that time frame, that quickly drops to only a 6.6% return, or that $10,000 investment only grew to about $36,000. And then you can see in the graphic there that 6 of the 10 best days occurred within 2 weeks of the 10 worst days. And we've had that occur pretty frequently here in the recent past. With currently we have the Iran war going on. We do not have a resolution with the Iran war, but the S&P 500 has already recovered and is now higher than it was before the war broke out. Last year we had Liberation Day with the announcements of tariffs. We had a very quick sell-off and rebound within a matter of weeks. And then also, obviously, we had COVID in 2020, where we had a sharp sell-off, but also a very rapid recovery. But equities, the S&P 500 is not the only asset class to invest in. When you look at the short-term, top-performing asset class can change from year to year. The rate of return on investments will vary over time. Investments that offer the potential for high returns also carry a high degree of risk. And we can see that in this diagram here, looking at the last 75 years. In a 1 year time frame, equities could provide you as high as a 52% return looking at the S&P 500, but you could also weather a year where you're negative 37%. And then in the gray bar, you have bonds that could also give you a pretty strong return potential at 33%, a little less risky on the down market at a negative 13%. The blue bar combination of equities and bonds, and then obviously cash. But as you go out longer term, you can weather some of those downturns, and you can see in a 20-year rolling period, equities could provide you anywhere from 6 to 18% return, kind of mitigating some of the down years, like you could see in any one time frame. So over any 1 year period of time, one asset class may be increasing in value while another may be falling in price. By allocating assets among investment classes, investors are looking to generate the highest potential return based on their investment goals, risk tolerance, and time horizon. Allocating the appropriate percent to stocks and bonds helps an investor stomach down market environments and stick to their investment plan. And we can kind of see those scenarios on the next slide where we have two portfolios, one more conservative with 30% in stocks and 70% in bonds. So you would have the best year at about 18% return, down year, worst year down 11% with an average return of 5%. And you'd have 3 years of the last 25 that you would expect a negative year. But then on the flip side, you could be more aggressive with 70% in stocks, 30% in bonds, and have a great year at 39% return. But then you have to be comfortable with a negative 29% return possibility, as we've experienced in the last 25 years. But if you're able to stomach that, you could have a higher average rate of return at nearly 8%. And then you also have the trade-off of not only weathering that worst year, but also having twice as many potential years with a loss in the last 25 years. So allocating those portfolios is not a set it and forget it. It's an ongoing process that's because the time can change and market environment can change. And over the last 3 years, we've really seen that with equity returns. We've had roughly 20% returns over the last 3 years that can really throw off the allocation within your portfolios. And that can really change your degree of risk, as we just saw with that negative 37% within stocks. In this diagram, your starting allocation and your target allocation is stocks of 40%, bonds 50%, cash and 10. Now, if you have strong stock returns, that could move to 49% and lowers your allocation to bonds and cash. So you're at a higher level of risk than what you set out to do. And here at Orstown, we manage portfolios for clients and we rebalance on a periodic basis to help continue to reflect your intent and your risk tolerance for your portfolio. So where's your money? We've just seen a couple scenarios of hypothetical portfolios, but what does your investment look like? Make sure you would include all your investments, include your cash savings, the investments you have for retirement and any other investments. Many find this exercise to be difficult. They've never thought about their investment by asset class before, let alone tried to figure out how well balanced their investment approach is, whether it's consistent with their investment objectives, their risk tolerance, and their time frame. Yet it can be a critical practice to go through. If you don't know where you stand, we have financial professionals that can help you with that. So we have financial professionals that can assist with all aspects of wealth management. If you're interested in getting in contact with one of them, we have a contact form at the bottom of our retirement and wealth page on orstown.com. You can contact our 1-800 number to customer service, and they'll get you in touch with one of our financial professionals, or you can visit one of our local branches and they will get you in touch with one of our financial professionals. Now we are right at 5:30, so I apologize. We're not going to have time to get to some of the questions. But as John mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, that we will address any questions that came through in the recording that will be emailed to all participants. But I would also encourage you to check out our upcoming webinars that Monica had mentioned. We have one coming up in a couple weeks on the financial planning, investing in retirement, legacy planning, and then that bonus one on protecting yourself from scams. So if you're interested in those, you can visit the URL at the bottom of the page, or you can scan the QR code. Again, I'd like to thank you for attending today's webinar, and I hope you have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.